Hello everyone and welcome back. This is video 8-2. In this video we're going to discuss the proper placement of dimensions on blueprints. Now there's a few rules that should be followed when placing dimensions. The first of which is when you add dimensions to a technical drawing, you never want those dimensions to be staggered. The way I've got them here, this is actually very bad. It creates a very sloppy drawing. If I come through here and just kind of add the rest of them, you can see the drawing becomes really hard to look at. It's a very sloppy drawing. It's not easy to read, and it's going to cause confusion to the individual who has to read the blueprint. So when we place these dimensions, we always want them to line up. We want them to form a chain. As you can see right here. Now I'm going to take this text and place it in there like that. So when our dimensions are lined up, when they form a chain, they're much easier to read and you just get a better quality drawing. It's going to be better for the individual who has to read the print. Anyone who is creating blueprints or technical drawings, whether it's an engineer or an architect or a skilled CAD technician, should always take into account the people who have to read the print. If you give them a print that's difficult to read, it just makes their job harder and it should just always be avoided. Now let's talk about a couple of other things. Another problem you don't want is this. You don't want extension lines, like I have here, to cross over a dimension line. This is another thing that can make a technical drawing difficult to read. It's even worse if you start staggering your dimensions like we have here. That's something that should always be avoided. So when we place these dimensions on a drawing, what you want is for your dimensions to line up as we had them before, and you don't want extension lines to cross dimension lines. This would be the proper placement. Now it's perfectly acceptable for extension lines to cross other extension lines like I have there. We just don't want extension lines to cross dimension lines like we have here. That should always be avoided. Now let's look at another rule. When placing dimensions on a technical drawing, your dimensions should be spaced properly. The first spacing should be 0.5 inches, the distance from the part to the first dimension. So if I add a dimension here, you can see that my spacing is 0.5. Now, any dimensions that are applied after that can be spaced at 0.375. So I'll add a dimension. And if I just adjust the precision of that dimension, you can see that that is actually 0.375. And the same would apply for this one up here. So I have these lines and I'm going to use them as a guide when I place my dimensions. I can delete them afterwards. So now when I place my dimensions and they're properly lined up, they're not staggered, they're properly spaced from the drawing, or from the object, there you have proper dimensions. Spacing is absolutely critical when you place dimensions on a technical drawing. It just makes a technical drawing easier to read, and this spacing should be uniform throughout the entire technical drawing. And one last rule: when we add a dimension to a drawing, if it's at all possible, you want to try and get that dimension outside of the part. If a drawing's overly complicated and you can't get it outside of the part, it's acceptable to put it inside the part. But if you can, you always want to try and get the dimension outside of the part. Okay, that concludes video 8-2. As usual, thank you for watching.